You do not hate people. You just feel better without them. Not always. Not forever. But after a certain amount of time with others, no matter how much you care about them, something inside you starts running low. And the only thing that refills it is being alone. You cancel plans and feel relief instead of guilt. You leave parties early and breathe easier the moment you are outside. You have a full life, good relationships, people who love you, and still you crave solitude the way other people crave connection. And somewhere along the way you probably started wondering, why am I like this? The answer is not introversion. It is not a personality type. It is something that happened or did not happen during a very specific window of your childhood. And once you understand what it was, you will never see your need for solitude the same way again. Here is what most people get wrong about people who prefer being alone. They assume it is a preference, like preferring coffee over tea, a simple personal choice with no deeper explanation. But psychologists who study solitude and social withdrawal have found something far more interesting. The preference for being alone, particularly when it is strong, consistent, and feels more like a need than a choice, is almost always rooted in early childhood experience. Specifically in how safe or how unsafe being around other people felt during the years when your nervous system was first learning what the world was like. Your brain does not form a preference for solitude randomly. It forms a preference for solitude because at some point, early and often, being alone was safer, quieter, or more predictable than being around people. And your nervous system remembered, not as a memory you can recall, as a setting, a default that your body runs without asking you every time the world gets too loud, too unpredictable, or too demanding. To understand why certain childhoods produce adults who prefer solitude, you need to understand 3 specific experiences that shape the nervous system's relationship with other people. The first is emotional unpredictability. Children who grew up in homes where the emotional environment was inconsistent, where a parent's mood could shift without warning, where affection was unpredictable, where love felt conditional, learned something very early. Other people are unpredictable, and unpredictable things are exhausting to be around. When you cannot read the room, when you never know if this interaction will feel safe or not, your nervous system stays in a low-level state of alert around other people. And being alone becomes the only place where the alert can turn off. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, a chronic state of monitoring your environment for threats that developed as a survival response and never fully deactivated. Adults who grew up with emotionally unpredictable caregivers often report feeling genuinely tired after social interactions, not because they are introverted, but because their nervous system is running threat detection software every time they are around other people. Being alone is not a preference. It is a rest from a system that never fully learned how to switch off. The second experience is emotional neglect. Not abuse, not cruelty, just absence. Children who grew up in homes where their emotional needs were consistently unmet, where adults were physically present but emotionally unavailable, learned to become self-sufficient very early. They learned that their inner world was their own to manage, that reaching outward for comfort usually did not work, that they were safest, most regulated, most in control when they relied on themselves. This self-sufficiency is often mistaken for introversion. But it is something different. It is a child who learned that other people cannot be counted on to fill your emotional needs, and so built an entire inner world that could. That inner world does not disappear in adulthood. It becomes your most comfortable place. The third experience is overstimulation. Some children grew up in chaotic environments. Large families, loud households, constant activity, little privacy or quiet. For children with sensitive nervous systems, and research suggests that somewhere between 15 and 20% of people are born with higher sensory sensitivity. Constant overstimulation is not just uncomfortable. It is genuinely dysregulating. Their nervous system never gets the quiet it needs to reset. And so solitude becomes not just preferred but necessary, a biological requirement that their childhood environment could not provide, and that their adult self now seeks constantly. Understanding where your need for solitude comes from does not mean you need to fix it. Most people who prefer being alone do not need more socializing. They need to understand what their solitude actually is, and relate to it with intention rather than confusion or shame. Here is what that understanding changes. The first shift is recognizing solitude as regulation, not rejection. When you leave a social situation feeling drained and you need to be alone to recover, that is not antisocial behavior. That is your nervous system doing exactly what it learned to do. Recovering from the energy cost of monitoring an environment that once required constant monitoring. When you name it correctly, this is my nervous system regulating, the guilt disappears, because you are not rejecting people. You are taking care of the part of you that learned to work very hard around them. The second shift is understanding the difference between chosen solitude and avoidant solitude. Chosen solitude is restorative. You are alone because being alone genuinely fills you up. Creativity flows, thoughts clarify, energy returns. Avoidant solitude is protective. You are alone because being around people feels risky, like something might go wrong, like you might be hurt or overwhelmed or misread. Both feel like a preference for being alone. But one is coming from a place of fullness and the other from a place of fear. The question to ask yourself honestly is, am I alone because I want to be here, or am I alone because I am afraid of what happens if I am not? The third shift is the most important. The childhood experiences that led you here, the unpredictability, the neglect, the overstimulation, created a nervous system that is exquisitely sensitive to other people. You notice things others miss. You read rooms that others walk through without registering. You feel the emotional undercurrents of situations that most people cannot even detect. This sensitivity, which made childhood harder, is also one of the most valuable things about you. It makes you a better friend when you choose to show up, a better observer of human behavior, a better reader of what is actually happening beneath what people say. Your preference for solitude is not a flaw that needs correcting. It is the shape your nervous system took in response to the world it grew up in. And that shape has edges that are sharper and more useful than you have probably ever given yourself credit for. You did not choose to prefer being alone. Your nervous system chose it for you, based on what it learned a long time ago about what other people cost and what solitude provided. But you get to choose what you do with that now, not to fix it, not to force yourself into a more social version of who you are, but to understand it, and to treat yourself with the same gentleness you would offer someone else who learned early that the world was safe or quiet.